Hi guys, hope you're well. I've got a really good kind of guest today, and it's someone that I think I've known for about 10, 12 years, and we'll go into that in a second. But one of the things I was very keen to do with the Growth Strategy podcast and live stream, and this goes out on YouTube, but it's also on iTunes and Spotify. I was very keen to interview and talk to real people with real businesses who've kind of got real stories to tell, and actually use that as a way to help educate others, share kind of best practice, and actually just as a great way to kind of catch up and share some interesting people that I'd recommend you follow. So I'm going to introduce James now. So hi James, would you like to say hi to everyone?
Evening. How you doing? You okay?
Perfect. How's lockdown treating you? I haven't seen you since we had lunch, didn't we, at that place in Gosforth?
Dean and Daniel.
Yes.
Yeah. It's been a strange few weeks. You know, lockdown has brought its own challenges as you'd expect. The market has totally changed. The world of funding is just on its head. It's all over the place. It's you see everyone goes, oh, it's like 2008, it's like whatever, and everyone keeps trying to compare it to another financial time, but it's not. It's different. It's totally different. The world is different. Everything's different. It's always changing, always in flux, and you learn something new every day, and you have to be on top of people all the time. So, from a business and work perspective, you have to be smart. You have to be nimble. You have to sit, you have to read, you have to listen, you have to be able to do everything at the minute. You need what was okay yesterday is not going to be okay tomorrow, and what's okay tomorrow is not going to be all right next week. There's been a lot of that, a lot of movement, a lot of products coming and going, things that were just everything changes. But from work is one side of it, and then on the opposite side, we've had to deal with dog has had to get surgery. My son has had to get surgery. The dog has decided to join
That's
me.
okay. It adds flavor to the conversation. It's good.
Yeah, it's So business is one side of it, and then you've got to manage that work-life balance. You have to manage the personal side as well. So actually, one of the good things is because I've not been able to go out and see clients, and I've not been able to, a huge amount of my work is the battery on my mobile is dead all the time because I'm constantly on it. But between it and Zoom calls, I'm spending so much more time doing that, but I'm not having to give up where I'm giving up being physically there to see people. I'm saving a lot of time by not traveling to see people.
Yeah, you can get very efficient doing that.
Yeah, so on the work-life balance side of it, it's really helped in that, my dog has had to go through rehab, my son has had to get eye surgery, and it's nice to be there. It's nice to be there. It's important to be there.
So with the kind of the interview series, I guess I do almost up to 20 now. I always like to ask you about you and your kind of backstory, and almost then go through the journey about how we get to today. Is that cool? So
Yeah,
would you be happy to talk about like where you kind of grew up and your background and almost your journey through into, I guess, when we first met?
yeah, fine. Well, look, so just about me, I moved over to England in 2005 for university. I'm from a Northern Irish farming family, um, and basically at the time, the Northern Irish government was sort of against farmers passing on farms to their children. My parents only own I think it's about a 50-acre farm to try and then split that in half and make two families try and make a living out of 25 acres each. You couldn't do it. So, but me and my brother had never aspirations of being farmers. So he's gone on. He went to university in Dundee, became a doctor. I went to Newcastle, and and I've gone into the world, and I went into the world of banking. So I finished university, had was went to NatWest RBS for graduate program there, went to Nissan, Rolls-Royce, a few other different places. And then while I was actually waiting for the final decisions about, job offers for that, I actually got offered a full-time position at NatWest at the time in working for Lombard. And I just goes, one was a staged contract where you may have retained your job after 2 years. One was a permanent contract. And being from that kind of farmer's mentality, they showed faith in me really early. They showed loyalty, and they wanted me to be there. So I thought, well, I'd rather take the contract while I can. So that's what I did. And I love working for the bank. It was banking. You learn so much. People give banking and bankers such a hard time, but I loved what I did. I had a couple of managers who just had total faith in me. I had one manager who, if I even spoke to them once a week, he just let me tiddle on, get on with what I do. And that show of faith was always what made me want to do more,
Yeah.
So I had worked for the bank for many years. I'd gone from being literally the lowest rung, where I was just processing other people's paperwork for them, to by the time I'd left, I was a corporate relationship director, looking after some of the biggest businesses in the region, and some of the biggest businesses in the Northeast, lending upwards of sort of 30, 35, maybe 40 million pounds a year.
Wow. Because I think it's really important that almost my perception of you, but I think other people's as well, just kind of know more about the background and, the farming heritage, and the fact that kind of trust and faith is really important to you. It adds like depth to your story that, again, when you now look to build your own business, that's why I think it's almost important to learn more about people and, kind of share more your story, because there'll be people that really resonate with it, but they'll know why, if that makes sense. It's not just
well, that's it exactly. And what you say there is kind of how my business set up. So you and I met when you were working for Tees Valley Unlimited. It would have probably been just before 2010. And the way the bank always worked was that whenever you dealt with somebody, when you deal with the bank, you deal with the bank products. And that was kind of how it always was. But I always was, whenever you spoke to a customer, you started to get a bit more in depth into who they are, what they're doing, how they do things. I was constricted by if somebody had said to me, oh, well, we need to do this, I would always want to go, well, actually, I know the person who does that. Here you go. Here's their number. And I've always I always believe I'm well connected. And I always believe that, being open and honest and having a black book of people that you can go, somebody says to you, oh, how do you do this? Or who do I need to speak to about this? Just saying, well, look, this is the person you speak to. That gives you a lot of credibility and builds a lot of rapport with people. So whenever you had built the Catalyst Fund, you spoke to companies, Teesside had so many people who were importing or taking on big contracts. The Catalyst Fund was to drive that. So I've always been a big person, through the years of working with the local funds and introducing clients to them, because there is sometimes that I may not have been able to write that bit of business for them. I may not have been able to write that deal for them. I may not have been able to support at the time. However, if I get them the funding they need or help them get to where they need to be, the next time they want something, they come back to me, because I've gone out of my way to help them for no benefit of my own.
Yeah, I must. In my book, it's all about adding value outside your interest. So it's when you've genuinely got nothing to gain, but actually it does more than anything. It helps build and cement a relationship. So one of the big things that I've been doing on LinkedIn lately is that I'll be scrolling through and I'll see someone that I don't necessarily know them, but they're still in my network, and they're looking for a job, and they might be a quantity surveyor, say, and then I'll just keep scrolling, and I'll see someone advertising a QS job, so I'll go back and share it. But it's I I have nothing to gain from that, but you never know where things might happen in 10 years' time. And actually, ironically, that was it Beelham House where your office used to be, where I think we first met. But it was just, that was 10 years ago. And actually, it's quite scary, actually, where time goes, but also how things kind of change in the timescale. But again, it's just how, relationships take a long time to build. That actually, I think sometimes some people, they're too short-term or short-termist in their approach, and they're just trying to sell stuff now. And actually, that's completely the wrong way to do it. And actually, it's a good example of that.
Well, so that's kind of the way I always worked at the bank. And then I got to about 13 years in, and it got to the point that I was dealing with such big companies, doing such big projects, but so much of my work was just, clients just sent you invoices in, and you were just, the first time you spoke to them, they send me we would do all the big chat and the big discussion, go, oh yes, brilliant, yes, big credit line, lovely, lovely, brilliant, thanks for all your help. Then the next time they send me the invoice, great. Then the next time they send me an invoice, and I'll reply off my phone at the time going, sorry, I'm out of the office at the minute, can you stick them to my assistant? And then after they realize that I'm not involved in the documentation side, and the system automatically sent them documents, I kind of became redundant. After I got the credit line and done all the initial pricing and discussion, it was easier for me just to, people then just started sending the stuff directly to my assistant. And then by that point, because we weren't allowed to do our own business development at the time, I was kind of sat in my hands at times. And it was wonderful whenever you'd be pulling down, you do the negotiations on a really big deal or a big structured thing. But by the time the bank had changed its processes in that they took a lot of the credit function and moved it out of the country, and my assistant did the documents, and I wasn't doing the business, I wasn't allowed to do the business development myself, I was kind of stuck. And what I'm good at, or what I always perceived I was good at, was building rapport with people. I am a talkative person, but
I think we know that.
I know it's fine, but the whole point about being talkative is that you learn to find ways to build rapport. I spent so many years stood behind a bar talking to people. So you learn.
I throw something out? I was going to say, do you think that's, I'll judge myself, but almost a working class thing? It's having the banter, or a regional thing that from Liverpool, if you're not forward, you're not going to get noticed. You almost need to fight your own corner, and you need a bit of banter just to kind of get through life. And do you think it's the same?
Well, for me, I always find that I've never been the most. As a kid, I was not the most confident. Where I was talking about my son having to go and get surgery on Monday, he had to go and get surgery to fix a lazy eye, and that's something I grew up with, and has always been something I've been self-conscious with. Strange enough, I haven't got a huge amount of hair either. Strange enough, self-conscious about it. But I would rather be known as the Irish guy with a beard than the bald fella. So you figure out what way you want to be known, but I will always be known as a talkative person, but because I'm talkative, I'm engaging. And by the time that you've talked with someone, you've engaged with someone, that gets you in the position to be in the opportunity to listen. One of the best bits of advice I was ever given, you've got one of these and two of these. Sometimes you have to learn to talk, but you have to learn to listen. So, for me, I'd got to that point that I don't think, whenever there was a big project on, and there was a big project on, brilliant. I was engaged, I was fully involved. But whenever you got times a year where it was just trucks and trailers and cars and vans, it just lost the enjoyment for me.
Okay.
So sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, because I'm about to ask you about the business, but I'm actually flattered that we have people watching. I was going to say, guys, actually drop in some questions in the chat should you wish, and I'll drop them in later on.
No.
So back to your comment. So is that the point is that what made you decide to eventually move on?
Yeah, pretty much. I had got to the point that I started to feel too long new. It's one of those ones that the banks went through what was called ring fencing,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of stuff was made to make the businesses more lean, to take a lot of more structure out, to make things, to make the whole process a lot more simple, a lot more straight lined, and that's lovely. And that's how banking has to be done. There's bank capitalization rules and all of the other financial metrics that the banks have to hit now. They have to make a return on capital. Whenever you think that I started in banking in Newcastle, there was 150, 160 people employed by the bank at that time. To say now there's about a third of that, that kind of tells you, to make the same number of to keep the same number of clients happy, but with such a big reduction in people, that is down to technology, it's down to streamlining, it's down to changing of processes. And those, to me, maybe I'm a little bit old school. My godfather, I'm not a hugely religious person or anything like that, but my godfather was a banker for the Bank of Ireland. Mm-hmm. And from his 16th, he dropped out of school at 16. The day after his 16th birthday, he joined the bank, and he worked the whole way until he had to retire for the same bank, the same job. And I was very much that way, that I would have stayed there for my entire career because I loved what I did. But I got to the point that where I was, there wasn't really anywhere to go up. Mm-hmm. Because of my family situation, there wasn't really an opportunity to go anywhere else without having to leave the area, which was going to be, my wife lived in Liverpool for a long time, and she wanted to stay here. Mm-hmm. And I sort of goes, I got to the point that you were getting recruiters and people messaging you all the time going, Joe, there's an opportunity out here. Why don't you come and explore? And I took 2 weeks off work. I had probably 15, 16 interviews between banks, alternative funders, alternative brokers, everything else like that. And Joe, I was so flattered after coming out of it. It was phenomenal. It was one of those ones that I kind of thought, oh, I'll go out and see it, but I've been, is the grass going to be any greener? Is it going to be this, going to be that? And I went out and I had a phenomenal time meeting some phenomenal people. Really loved it, really loved the process. But whenever you start going, well, I got this offer, you phone someone up and you go, I've got this offer from somewhere. So I'm going to take that up, but my apologies, I want to leave. I'm not going to take the option up with you. And then you get 2 days later, someone goes, oh, it's this. Oh, we'll increase this for you, and we'll increase this. And I'm sort of going, well, I'm not. The money's never been my driver. The money has never been a driver for me. It's autonomy. It's being able to do things the way I like. And it was one of those ones that you start going, well, if I start letting people get into bidding more and start throwing money at me, I'm going to end up unhappy again.
Yeah, there's also the ethics of it as well. You don't want to be seen as the guy that puts people against each other.
So yeah, and I just was, people come back with an alternative offer. I just go, John, no, I really don't want to do that. I then got contacted by an old colleague of mine from the bank, and we had been. Spent a year as a trainer for the bank. And I'd been on a couple of the bank's accelerator programs, for internal development stuff like that. And he had been my mentor on that, stuff like that. And he approached me because he had been working for a large broker group. So I went out to them, explained what my idea was, that, my world is my strength will always be my knowledge of asset world, especially more complex stuff, more tricky things, especially around the world of green and renewable. But I've always believed in that sort of ethic of old school banking and old school bankability, in that if you deal with a company, you have to try and all these people wake up one day with a dream and ambition that they want to go on and do something. And if you can do something to help someone get on that journey or get them from A to B, you do it. And that's where I went out. And that's whenever I spoke to them, they said, they offered me, you're usually meant to go through a full vetting process. You're meant to go this and that. Now, don't get me wrong, the guys already kind of knew me, so I probably didn't need to go through as stringent a vetting process as most. But you normally have to get loads of references and this, that, and the other from multiple banks. But I didn't have multiple banks to go to. I only had one. I had 13 and a half years of service with one place. So that gave me, so basically with working with the net, within sort of, I always think you have to do, if you're going to do the job, you have to do it right. So I was a big person for making sure that everything is compliant. So you can go out in my world, you can go out and get your FCA registered. Well, technically, there's a lot of people who aren't FCA registered, and there's a lot of people who aren't part of the National Association of Finance Brokers. And some people use them, some people don't. It's your people's call. But that was important to me. It was important to me to have the right regulation. It was important to me because the bank was always so much compliance. Compliance is in my head of how you have to do things. So I started working with a network that provides all my compliance for me, but lets me be wholly autonomous from them. So I can run my business the way I want. But at the start, I believed in start cheap, fail cheap. So if it didn't work out, I couldn't get it to work the way I wanted, I could quash it and go back into banking or go do something different. But the way it works for me is that, I work with a network of people. They're all around the country that have got all different skill sets, have got all different, abilities. And, some people are hard ass, some people are soft ass, some people are industry specific. But I've also got people who come in and do my, for my commercial property stuff. So if somebody comes in, they ask me about commercial property, I basically have people who are deal packaging managers for me. So having done, sort of 13, nearly 14 years in the bank, I know asset finance, I know the intrinsities, I know if there's anything, I know the market as well as anybody ever will. But to be good at the higher level funding, for some of the funding projects I had to be, you had to understand every financial arm of that business. So, I've spent so many years being taught and understanding invoice finance. I've been taught property mortgaging, been taught everything. I've got my qualifications through the Chartered Bankers Institute. So I've got all those things. And I just goes, well, actually, you go and speak to somebody rather than being someone who you want to buy a 20 grand car or you want to buy a 50 grand piece of kit. That's fine. I want to help everybody where I physically can. But where my skill set sits me best is whenever you need somebody to come in, sit in the middle, and actually just try and figure out all of your funding, and figure out how you make things neater, longer term.
So the business is Trusted Business Partner. Is that correct? If you were to describe that to my grandmother, how would you describe it?
On a very basic level, it is a commercial finance brokerage. So very basic level, commercial finance brokerage, specializing in asset finance and cash flow funding. So whenever effectively, when it comes to asset finance, it is purchasing of equipment, purchasing of fixed assets or now as well, intangible assets for businesses.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah.
How do you find it? Do you enjoy it? Are you enjoying it? Because how long's it been since you kind of set up?
I've been set up now for just over 18 months.
Okay.
Just over 18 months. For me, I love it. So the direction I set out on day one was that I was going to be, just speak to as many companies as you can, and just sort of not say churning business, but it was always going to be that you did whatever you sort of came across your path. But as it's evolved, I sort of found more where my niche and where my skill set and my knowledge fits in well.
Can I ask what that niche is?
Well, it's because my skill set leads to, because I know banking products to a heavy extent, and I've got such a wide range of funders I work with. For me, I spend a lot of time working with corporate finance guys. Mm-hmm. So whenever you get someone who's buying a business or restructuring a business, their bit will be that they're better at going and building the cash flows, building the financial models, and if it has to go to equity, they're better at the sale, they're better at all of that. But whenever it actually comes to raising the finance for doing it, mm-hmm. My skill set is in that banking sector, is in that generalist funding sector. Okay. And I will go and take that work away and do that for them so that they can go and spend their time shortening the timeline to get the thing over the line. They can sit and work with their clients. I'll just sit as an intermediary to do the things that I work with probably about 4 or 5 corporate finance companies across the Northeast at the minute. And typically, I'll get probably 3-4 calls a week where somebody go, right, look, got a client who's doing this, what would you suggest? And then they'll go take the information I've given them and said, they'll go, we've got this business and they're selling it to someone. And, I'll say to them, well, look, how you would do it from a banking point of view is this, and this. You can raise a bid against the invoice, against the debtors. You can raise a bid against the assets. You might be able to raise a bid against the building, look at a full ABL structure, things like that. And then they'll position it back to them going, or we can look at an institutional lender. And then they'll go back to their client and say, well, look, you've got option A, option B.
Got you.
And for me, it works really well in that, for those kind of projects, I can help out in that. But they'll also get the weird and wonderful ones whenever a client will phone them up and go, oh, well, I have a customer and they've, got trade finance. They're just using their cash to buy mm-hmm. their kits, and it comes from China, and it's, they're now getting a little bit wary. I go, well, actually, have you ever explored trade finance? Have mm-hmm. you at the minute where there's loads of people looking CBILS loans, you may not get funding through your bank, but whenever you actually sit down and go through things with a client, you find how they're funded and if there's a different way of releasing the funding through something different. So, for example, if they've got an IF line, IF funder might provide the CBILS loan if you change. And at the minute, the market rates might be quite good to change. So that's an option. It's just they, as a corporate finance company, that's not their normal work. So that to them is just passing that on for me to do it on their behalf. And they'll do all the financials, they'll do all the rest of the work, but I just go and get them a structure and see if the client wants to work with it or not. Does it fit in their they want to do? And that's how we work.
Because what I find interesting is almost because I sit at the next stage on is that, like, I was approached about doing a company turnaround in Scotland where they already had finance involved, and I've had multiple calls with them and the MD about doing different things, and they're just not making any money, and they're trying to figure out, well, how do we actually do this? And one of my things that I'm very passionate about, it's almost my background, and I always roll up my sleeves, but chats we've had in the past is I'm just crack on and do it and do more and do it better and execute almost the simple stuff better. But often it's only when you really get a chance to kind of sit down with people and really drill into it there's the answer that they'll tell you, and then there's the truth that sits behind it, and it's trying to get
Exactly.
past it. I have one question which relates to this, is that, so I like to clip up all these different answers for YouTube for different kind of segments and stuff. But actually, what would you say are the top 3 things that businesses normally get wrong in relating to their finance?
It comes down to knowledge and what is perceived as expensive. But whenever you're talking to people about funding equipment, they will, the amount of times you'll see like people who own large buses, if you talk a large sort of 50-seater coach brand new, you're probably talking £200,000, but or more. But the amount of people who will buy that bus, but fund it over a 4-year cycle, as an example, that will be hugely cash flow disadvantageous to them. But they'll keep the bus for 7 years, or they'll depreciate it over 7 years. So if you know you're going to keep it 7 years, you're going to, and you say its economic useful life is 7 years, why have you funded over 3 or 4?
Okay.
So that's one thing I always see as always being a problem, because everyone will go, oh yes, but I'll have 3 years further down the line that I
might not survive to that point. Yeah, I'm with you.
But
I think part
if
of that,
if you've hampered your cash flow and don't survive 4 years, then you're stuffed.
It's when people, you don't know what you don't know. Do you know what I mean? So
Exactly.
for instance, if they don't even know that there's someone they can ask or talk to, it's so that's one. Are there any others that you kind of see common?
Well, the second one sort of sits on the side of that. So you take, you'll find a lot of people who've got seasonality in their business. So you might have, again, take example of bus and coach, because there's a big talking point about it at the minute. But bus and coach, from pretty much November till February, some of them, if you're in coach world, you pretty much do nothing. Some people would just do nothing at that point in time. But you'll have someone who's funding a bus and they've got a hire purchase agreement, but they'll also have an invoice finance line. So technically, you have to take money from your invoice finance line to pay your hire purchase, but you're paying interest for that and interest for that. However, if you'd actually spoken to a funder and actually understood what your options were, again, know what you know, you could have structured that deal differently. You could have had seasonal payments. So you could have had 8 payments high and then down low for the rest. And you can match your cash flow and your seasonality to your financial products. And the amount of people I see getting, you speak to people getting VAT loans over that period of time, where they've got invoice finance or they extend out their overdraft. Oh, there's other ways of doing it. And if you go and structure them properly, you can save a lot of money through the year. And the other bit is, where people go, oh yes, but my payments are higher later on the year. But actually, depending on the time you start your agreement, your actual interest payments could actually be considerably lower overall by structuring it better. And structuring makes a big difference in things like that.
I'm with you. Because it's a funny one that with a lot of business education stuff is that you can teach people how to grow and promote and do sales and marketing and management. And that's actually quite easy to teach. But actually, because it changes so fast and the amount of depth that you need, you can't really write a textbook easily on what you do.
Exactly. Well, the last point of it would be, you don't believe the marketing. So the thing is, everybody goes, right, whenever you're buying a piece of kit, so you were managing director of a large manufacturer, after you've gone and spoken to your bank and the bank has said, oh, it's not for us, you will then go, a lot of people, there's a lot of embarrassment in it. People don't want to hear no. or don't want to know that the bank thinks their business isn't as good as they think it is. So what do they do next? They go to the next funder that they've ever heard of.
Mm-hmm.
But because you don't know where they sit, where these different things sit in the market, the difference between a tier 1 and a tier 3 can be quite big. But the one in tier 3, because they're getting the stuff that drops off tier 1, they're charging you quite a considerable bit more. But you didn't realize that there's actually a tier 1.5, a tier 2, and there's loads of other funders in that market. But strangely enough, because these guys make so much money because they're getting what should be tier 1 deals, but charging more for them, they market really well. And they'll agree your deal really quickly. They'll do it really well. They're phenomenal businesses with phenomenal people.
But as the owner, it costs you a fortune. Yeah.
Well, they did not say they cost you a fortune, but they just cost you more. Yeah. But you just didn't realize that there's that in the middle tiers. And going forward, whenever now banking appetites, if you think now how many businesses are going to be absolutely devastated by COVID-19, the tier 1 banks aren't going to go, at the minute, you think, where I said at the start that the number of bank managers in the area went from 100 to 150 or so, whatever, to a quarter of that now, but they've still got the same number of clients. They're not going to want to take, coming out of this, the lion's share of the risk.
Yeah.
So this is going to open up the market. This is going to see people move from funding at tier 1. They're going to have to come down. They're going to have to spread their funding out. You're going to have to use the market, because the banks aren't going to go, you might have had a brilliant business 3 or 5 years ago, and then you've got absolutely devastated, you've overgeared, where the bank is now, moved its credit function to India, has less people, and they've got less time to handle all these cases. They're not going to have time for those cases as well, which is the sad thing, because again, I'm a big person for banking and doing banking well, but the banks can only do so much. The high street can only do so much.
So we're almost related to this is that in the run-up, I saw when you kindly posted on LinkedIn saying that you were going to do this and you're a little bit nervous and it's a bit out of your comfort zone. As a small business owner, how do you actually do your kind of sales and promotion? As in, do you do any social media? Do you do any kind of video to get yourself out there?
Well, the whole intention was that that's where I was going to be doing. So over this period, I've engaged with a wonderful guy called Sean at Creative Chameleon to update my branding. Prior to lockdown, I should have had 2 new lads coming into work for me. I should have had offices in Gosforth. We're in the middle of working with a company in Teesside to build a new website, a company called Carvel Group. All fantastic people that are really, but at the minute I'm still processing and doing this all in the background, but obviously the guys haven't joined me because the timing just wasn't there. The branding is just finished and we're going to launch that starting next month. The website is, Carvel have brought their guys back on board and taking people on furlough. So we're going to start processing that. For me, at the minute, the whole bit was that get the branding neat, get the brand to look right, get the whole look and feel the way I want it to do, and then start pushing out. The biggest bit about what is my branding and what is my promotion is so much of my work comes from referral. Again, it comes from my accountants. It comes from the accountants, the corporate finance guys. Pick up the phone and go, James, how do we do this? I tell them, we sort it out. They explain it to their customers, and the customers, that they are generally me getting things done. Me getting things done is what brings me clients, because the accountants and stuff just turn around and go, right, James, can you do this? I've got Zoom call on Thursday morning at, I think it's 8:45, and that's new client, needs something done, and it's it's on 3 different layers. From originally just seeing the financials, I've got they want to talk about one thing, but I've discovered that it could actually be done on 3 different layers, and that's what we need to work.
Because what I was going to say is that because inherently you will always be the face of your brand and your company, there is real value in almost getting that out there. But likewise, I think there's also something you could do very well in actually sharing the knowledge piece on what you do, because you'd almost, you can become a thought leader in your in your topic. That what's great is that you get referrals from people that so you're commercially respected, that brings you the work. But again, almost your wider knowledge within the community to help educate them so they might come to you, I think it's a real piece, because what you do is so difficult, to maybe do little bits on YouTube or whatever, just because I think actually it would work really well.
That's something that at the minute I've spent the last sort of 10 days writing a piece, which is, I kind of thought I would get it churned out in half a morning and it'd be quite simple and neat. But again, it's me, it's always going to be slightly wordy and all that. But it's about the evolution of banking and how CBILS and how, the coronavirus business interruption loan schemes, how they will change the market and how it'll take people, how, everyone just thinks, oh, I get a loan. I get a loan for 250 grand because I don't have to give a guarantee for that. Great. But is that actually going to solve your problem? Is that actually what you need? So that's so I've been writing this piece, and the whole bit is I'm sat there going, the email was hopefully going to be like, 4 or 5 paragraphs. It's not a dissertation, because I'm so passionate about believing that things can be done, can be improved, and can be changed.
But one thing you could do is that you could split it up into multiple articles and put part 1, part 2, part 3 on LinkedIn, or you could actually talk about it as well. And what might be 7 pages is probably 2 minutes worth of just talking about it.
Not for me, it wouldn't be 2 minutes, but for a normal person, yeah, it would be.
No, that's cool. Can I ask you about the rebrand? And what I'm going to do, I'm asking it because, again, obviously we have marketing companies and there's a lot of them, but actually from a business owner, how did you find the process to actually find someone to work with, articulate what it is you're trying to do, and then go through to, I guess, where you are, and then hopefully soon the kind of execution? How did you find the process?
Well, for me, I couldn't draw a stick man with a compass and a ruler. I'm not creative in any way, shape, or form. So I put a post out on LinkedIn, and I asked the people I know, going, right, who do you know who's good, who can give me some guidance, can give me some help, who's good. And to me, because my business comes from recommendations, I wanted recommendations. I wanted people that tell me who was good, who was worth speaking to. And I spoke to some really, really lovely people. And the price, whenever you come down, I wanted somebody who got me. That was the important piece to me. Don't get me wrong, price is always important, but I needed to make sure that the trade-off, that whenever I spoke to someone, they got where I was going, they got me. And I had ended up speaking to 5 companies. I had originally only said I wanted to speak to 3, but then a couple of people contacted me out of it. And I got a couple of people who were really, really engaging and really, really nice people. And I actually just had to turn around and let somebody else decide. Actually, that person was you actually pretty much decided it. I literally left it to you and my wife to decide. My wife's a marketing manager for Cancer Research UK. So I just basically took the decision out of my own hands, because it was a toss-up between two people who had done some cracking work for other people, and I love both of their portfolios, and it just came down to it, right? How do I get it to work?
I'm with you.
And settled on a guy called Sean Stembridge, and we spent a lot of time cracking on. I get along well with him on a personal level. He just seems he's a real decent lad. And what I wanted, it's not he didn't try to tell me what I wanted. He just let me get on with my merry way and say, look, what do you want? And right, he went back and came back with loads of different ideas. To be very honest with you, it ended up being that nothing was a problem.
Yeah.
Nothing was a problem if I go, oh, I don't like that, or that doesn't work with me. He would then go, well, okay, do this, or go to this other option. And it was always sort of, yeah, actually, John, I really like. But whenever I made the initial first logos, it was, the color scheme was picked because it was JCB yellow, and the logo was, the initials of the business with two black circles, and the black circle synonymous in asset finance funding cars. And I thought, oh yeah, that's really, really good. But whenever you take it that my world is beyond just that, and it's grown on, I needed something different that was more fit for purpose. And Sean got that, and he helped me across every stage of where I needed to be. And we've got those pieces all working together, and for me, it's been a huge learning piece. And I wanted someone who wasn't just going to say, right, well, here's this, and if you need anything else done, it's a charge. He was very much of, I'll get you involved, and he's still teaching me how to use things. He's, I'm going to start doing a bit more stuff with like Photoshop and stuff like that. And he's going to teach me how to do that. But awesome. That's because he's an engaging character like that. So that's quite good. It's a process I didn't understand. I've really enjoyed it.
But I think it is really useful that just to hear someone talk about it and their experience, because you'll have loads of marketers that, it's useful for them to hear from someone who's a buyer, their process, what they like, what they don't like, in a way that they don't always get. So I think that was kind of spot on. I'm actually going through something similar, and it was where, although I am actually very good with the creative side of it and I do all my own stuff, on one of my new projects, I just had a mental roadblock. I was too close to it. And so anyway, I'm in conversations, but it's, I'm going through exactly the same thing at the moment. So I appreciate it. I thought it'd be an interesting topic. Conscious of family life and the dog and everything else, I ask all of my guests two main questions. One, which you kind of half answered before, but I'll give you the chance to kind of answer it again if you want to answer anything different, is that if you were to give advice to your younger self, and this can be any age, any point in your career, whatever, what would it be?
If it was me, if I was saying to myself, I left myself too long unhappy.
Wow.
And I was too long unhappy at something. And it is be more aware. At this time of mindfulness, this time that people talking about mental health, I'm from that, from that kind of family upbringing, that you don't talk, you don't talk about feelings, and you don't talk about these things. You don't talk when there's pressure on you. I talk, but at the time I didn't talk.
Okay.
I didn't. So I left myself too unhappy with something, and I just did it because I had kids and I had a family and I had responsibilities and it goes, it'll be all right tomorrow. It'll be it's my career and all this. It goes, well, no. If I had to tell myself to go back and do it again, it's, sometimes, you don't have long enough to be unhappy.
It's a very deep answer, but actually I really like it. It's one that you can properly kind of ponder over. And actually, like, just for one of my clients, I'm actually interviewing people tomorrow. And it's, I know a lot of people that do stay in jobs for a long time and they're genuinely unhappy, but it's also because the fear of change, and it's a very nuanced answer, but it's a very good one.
I was institutionalized. I was scared to move on to something else. So I get that.
And then related to this, what's the best piece of advice you've ever had?
Well, the one I said earlier on is obviously, you get advice from everybody. People will always try and give you advice, and people will always try and tell you something else. But sometimes it's the little daft things that stick with you. And somebody told me when I was, this is not profound or anything that's going to change your world. But I was always told that whenever you go out and do meetings with people, never wear a shirt that shows sweat marks. Never show it. But the thing is, and it's a jokey thing to say, but it's never let someone show that you go into a meeting and you know that you're stressed and you know that you're under pressure. But that is, you don't give away telltale signs where you don't need to. That was always, it's something stupid and daft, but it's always been in my head. And it doesn't have to be the big things. This is, it sort of comes round to what is the best bit of advice. But sometimes it's the little things that people tell you that trigger with you and matter the most. I just always remembered that there's always two videos that people have shown me in my life that have always resonated really well with me. One of them is a thing called Ducks and Eagles. So if you look it up on YouTube, it's some guy owns an enormous business up in America, and he talks about ducks and eagles, about how the people who complain are ducks because a complainer will find a complainer. The people who rise above that are eagles. I've always loved that one. And the other one is, the jar with stones. You fill it with big stones. They say, is it full? You put more and put in more and more. And then the last thing is, by the time you've put the big rocks, the small ones, and whatever else into it, crack a beer and throw it into it. Irrespective of whether it's the big things in life, the small things in life, there's always time for a beer with your mates. And they're the kind of things that resonate with me a lot, because in this time, I'm missing those things. I'm missing going out for a beer with my mates. It is the big thing. I do my job to cover the big things, but I have started to understand more of the little things.
Okay.
And be more present and more there for those things. And I did spend a lot of time being a duck and falling into processes, falling into procedures and complaining. And I'm not saying that banking people are like that. That was just me. I started to fall into that. And for so many years, I wanted to be that person that shot off and and attacked everything. And then I let myself, I always perceived to be that eagle. And then by the end of it, I let my wings get clipped and became a duck.
Profound. No, I think it's a good one.
Oh yeah, but there's more in this old shiny head than that,
I find it quite funny because this is the least I've ever spoken in 53 minutes in an interview. And I've interviewed like 20 odd people. But it's good. But it's all fascinating stuff. So exactly. I give everyone the chance to, is there anything you want to talk about? Is there anything you want to plug?
No, well, for me, I'm just a big person that, when people are got a business, they want to press on to the next level, they want to move things on, they want to work, they're a growing business, they're aspirational, they're the people I want to talk to. The people who've got a business and don't think they're getting the time of day from their bank. They're the people I want to talk to. The people who've got ambition and want to go somewhere, don't get me wrong, I will talk to anybody if they want to buy a piece of kit, something complex. They want to understand how funding can improve their business, how it can take it to, how you can change things, understand the opportunity cost that is involved in taking on projects. There's loads of people who do what I do on the grandeur scale of it, but I try to position myself in a place that the ones that need a different level of understanding, a different level of knowledge, that's where I want to be. And those people who don't have, your business isn't just a couple of cars and this, that, and the other, have all the time of the day for those people. But I want to try and help the ones you've got a big ambition of how we take it from A to B.
No, cool. Well, I appreciate your time. I know we've been meaning to set this up for a while, and it's great to see the new brand. But no, I've really enjoyed kind of catching up. It's great to hear your story, share your story. I then get to spend the next few hours, I get to clip this up, and LinkedIn caps it at 10 minutes. So I cut out and take all the best bits and almost, put that out. But then the whole thing goes on YouTube, and then I take the different bits and kind of share it. And what's been quite interesting is just the more people I talk to, I actually love getting all the different insights. So you got your knowledge, but people from different people, all these different areas that actually, even though I didn't plan it, I'm now up to 170 videos on YouTube. And it's actually it's starting to build for me the 10-year plan. So I'm 37 now. My target is to judge myself when I'm 45 or 50. And I've been going for 9 months. And actually, I'm ahead of where I ever thought I would be. And that's including COVID. So for me, it's just part of the journey that I actually look forward to looking back. So I think we're a similar kind of age. When we're about to retire, I'll be able to look back and watch this interview and kind of just see, hopefully, the progression over time. And then likewise, what I'm also thinking about doing is getting people back on in maybe like a year's time, doing an update, seeing what changed, what didn't. Because actually, I think real people resonate with real people. These aren't polished, perfected answers that have been scripted and set up, because that's not me, and likewise that's probably not you either. So it's almost, I'm embracing my niche to go for the authenticity, same as you. So almost there's lots of people that do what I do, but I have a different approach to it, and I know you're the same. So Thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure to catch up. I'm sure we'll grab a coffee and some lunch at some point when we're allowed out to play again. And stay in touch.
Pleasure. All right. Look after yourself. Best to you and your family.
Cheers, James.
Okay?
Bye-bye.